And a lot of people had commented, texted Michael different things on yesterday's pre-recorded show. And that was actually one of a young lady named Angie, and she was doing process work around a situation she found herself in and the emotions that were coming up around it. And that was actually from March of 2020. And so thank you for listening and caring and continuing to send love to Angie, even though that was some time back. And she's done a lot of work around it and did some responsibility communication and different things. So, but yes, she is still involved in the work, and she's been on the radio show here not too awfully long ago and was just listening. She didn't comment, but she was with us. And so we are live today from Warrensville Heights, Ohio. We, on our way through last night, about probably 30 miles south of where we're staying, is where Lisa, she's actually done a lot of the cooking, the raw cooking during some of the intensives when Ari wasn't available. And so she lives there in Akron. And so we stopped to see her and have dinner with her and then came on up. So we were a little late checking in last night, got a good night's rest and ready to rock and roll. And we haven't heard from Peter, but he is supposed to arrive from Sweden sometime around midnight tonight. He did not get the plane that he was supposed to get yesterday. And so his intensive has already begun, even before he left his country. So hold the space for him. He's hopefully still going to be able to do the archery championship, but since he missed today and signing up, we're not sure what that's going to do for him. We haven't heard from him. But regardless, he and Michael are going to be doing the quantum still point intensive, and since he's come from so far away, he's going to do more than just the 3 days. He's going to do 5 or 6 days. And he's already ready for it. Just the incident with his airline ticket and everything yesterday and just his attempts to get to the country have presented such challenges that he has really been triggered, but some good has absolutely, as it always does, come of it. He said that his family, they had a conversation and that it was the closest they had been in a long time, and they rallied around behind him to support him, and so we're looking forward to seeing him. And Michael has joined us now, so I'm going to say welcome, Michael.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing him too. It was a powerful processing session. We ended up doing a still point session over the phone between here and Sweden, so pretty sweet, pretty awesome. So Peter, I assume you're in the air somewhere we haven't heard from this morning. I assume you had to leave very early. And I will see you at midnight tonight. In the meantime, welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here to be part of this process. And it always amazes me just how the process unfolds. As I've shared several times, I've been rewriting the description to work toward helping people to build the brain cells for what the quantum still point looks like. And it's actually turning into another Why Is This Happening to Me Again book. So I'll look forward to the next time I get to share the next rendition of it. It's unfolding pretty powerfully. So glad y'all are with us. And Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
I guess it would help if I unmuted, right?
That old mute challenge is a bear.
No, I tell you what. Nobody has a hand up. And, of course, I'm not able to do Podbean this week. While we're here, I didn't bring the big microphone and all the other stuff. So they just have to pick up on the archives from Blog Talk. Anyway, but nobody in Blog Talk switchboard or chat room has a question. If you do, press 1. It puts a hand up.
And if not, then I'm going to continue with what we've been working to get back to for over a week now. We started last Friday with a kind of a synopsis of the work, another perspective on the work. So we'll step forward, and if you want to catch up with that, probably going back to a week ago Friday, would be the place to start with that. And the core piece of this puzzle to recognize is that the word love is a noun. It describes a state of being. Notice that we use words to communicate with each other, and if we have an inaccurate set of brain cells that go along with a particular word, then we're cut out of the experience of what that word represents or can lead us to. And the idea of language, of course, is to lead someone into an experience. The language is not the experience. And so to lead someone in that direction, so this word love represents a state of being that I can maintain no matter what goes on in the world, no matter what event happens. If I am aware of who I am and I've solidified myself in awareness of that, then nothing can override my true nature. If I mistakenly believe that love is a verb, as our culture has misled us into thinking, then I'm going to attempt, as many people do, and they wonder why there's so much trauma in their relationships, because they're trying to do something with each other that's impossible. You know, nobody's ever loved you. Nobody's ever going to love you. You've never loved anyone. I promise you never will love anyone. Because love isn't something we can do to each other. And if you set your mind to try to do it, of course you're going to fail because you can't do it. It's not a doing kind of thing. And I say, well, somebody told me I was supposed to love my neighbor, so I'm going to love my neighbor. And of course, if let's say I've got some old unresolved rage, that rage sets up an energy field that's going to draw a neighbor in to show me my rage. And, you know, just like when I put two middle C tuning forks together, one of them is vibrating and the other one's sitting still, the second tuning fork has no choice but to take on the energy of the first and begin to vibrate. It's not a choice. It's simply resonance. So if I hold, let's say, unresolved rage, and I recognize that the real purpose of life is to kick me in the limitation and show me what I'm damaging myself with, then life is going to hone in on my rage. And if a neighbor hones in on my rage, resonates it for me, and I hold this belief that I'm supposed to be loving my neighbor, rather than maintaining my awareness of myself as love, even in the presence of my rage, then I fail. And when people fail, they dump all sorts of garbage on themselves. So if you have a question about love being a noun or a verb, just hold a newborn child. Tap into the essence of the newborn. Is the newborn loving you? Clearly not. It's such a huge difference. But the mind wants to minimize it and go, oh, it doesn't really matter. So what? Go to the doctor and, you know, if he tells you you've got the ABC disease in some of your skin cells, and he's going to treat it. And he said, well, they're epithelial cells and epithelium cells, and we're going to treat one of them. Well, which one are you going to treat, Doc? Oh, I don't know. They're kind of, you know, it's just words. They're kind of the same thing, aren't they? Epithelium. Who's going to stay with that doctor for long? And so what we're looking to do is to recapture the accurate meaning of words, so that if we believe that the words of someone are accurate and important to understand and follow, we need to have an accurate understanding of those words. You know, one of the core misunderstandings of writing from the words most famous textbook as Living on Love, book on physics and physiology, psychology, cognitive science, genetics. And guess what? Most of the world has been fooled into thinking that this text, it's called the Old and the New Testament, is a religious text. And you can trick people by changing the meaning of words so deeply. And recognize that the Greek interpretation of the opening words of the book of John say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. And that's a total, complete misrepresentation of what's actually there. I have made the mistake of calling what the Greeks wrote translations, and I want to correct that mistake. There are no translations in Greek of the New Testament. There are interpretations, but there's a big difference between translation and interpretation. If we go to the translation of the words and we represent them accurately, at least as accurately as we can in the English language from the Aramaic, what those opening words say in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. So correctly understood, these words inform us of the power we have over our lives, our bodies, literally our so-called chemistry through the conscious use of our minds. And I shared a quote, and it seems appropriate to go back to that quote right now, and I'm going to do that. It'll take me a second to switch screens here. And then it'll take me another second to get back to this. But this quote from here's a physicist who wins a Nobel Prize in physics. And here's what he says. Tie into this quote from John in the beginning. Just think about the distinction here, the difference between, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. In the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. And then let's listen to Max Planck explain. Planck won the Nobel Prize 26 years earlier than he wrote this quote. So Max has been thinking about this for a long time. He wrote this quote in 1944, and it was 26 years earlier that he won the Nobel Prize in physics. And here's what he says. And I mean, the difference can't get bigger than this. In all my research, I have never come across matter. Now, this is a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. To me, the term matter implies a bundle of energy which is given form by an intelligent spirit. What is it that gives this form? It's mind energy. As a man who's devoted this whole life, he says, to the most clear-headed science, the study of matter, I can tell you, as a result of my research about atoms, this much: there is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. What is that force? It's mind energy. Exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force. Here's what Max Planck was pointing to 100 years ago. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. So there's one of the world's absolute preeminent scientists, and he's almost verbatim repeating the words of Yeshua, the words in the opening of the book of John. Mind energy becomes flesh. And until we recognize that, I mean, your thinking is the elemental force that pulls the atomic particles together, which he called quanta, and he changed the world of physics forever. I mean, the application of quantum mechanics and quantum physics is what has brought, I mean, you know, I'm sitting here in a house in Timbuktu talking to you, and you're in Timbuktu somewhere. Why? Because quantum physics became understood, because the operation of these packets of energy We couldn't have the internet if it weren't for Max Planck's discovery. And you know what? Can't have healing if we don't understand Yeshua's teachings. Now, whether you get them from Yeshua or not, I don't think Yeshua would care. But if you don't understand that it's your mind that produces the so-called chemistry in your structure, and if the chemistry in your structure is destroying you, and you don't know how to change your mind, you're in deep doo-doo. And if we go back into the ancient Aramaic scriptures, we don't have religion. We've got, folks, here's how your life works. Here's how it's put together. Here's another quote from an English physicist named Sir James Jeans. He was an astronomer and a mathematician. Today, he says, there's a wide measure of agreement on which side of physical science approaches most unanimity, that the stream of knowledge is heading toward a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought, that is, an organized state of mind energy, than a great machine. Living in ignorance, we think, oh, look at this machine, look at this mechanical, physical thing. Sir James Jean goes on to say, mind no longer appears as an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We're beginning to suspect that we ought rather to hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. Interesting. We've got Sir James Jeans, Nobel Prize-winning physicist. We've got Max Planck, Nobel Prize-winning physicist. The Nobel Prize wasn't around 2,000 years ago, but I guarantee you, this carpenter from 2,000 years ago knew what he was talking about. Let's listen to another physicist, scientist, Nikola Tesla. You know, if it weren't for Nikola Tesla, you and I wouldn't have electricity in our homes, because he invented the transmission technology to transmit electricity. You know, the lines that carry the electricity. That was Nikola Tesla's work. And he says, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than the previous centuries of its existence. Isn't that what's happened? And to bring this understanding into the realm of healing and disease means we have to surrender many false ideas. And in particular, the false ideas we've been taught about forgiveness. True healing is not about belief, but about the individual thoughts that make up the thing we call belief, and the forgiveness of the thought disorders that turn into disease. It has been proven that thought is back up and superior to whatever we think we see in the world. Changing thoughts literally changes the structure of the so-called matter that makes up your form. Forgiveness allows you access to the dissociated mind energy that is at the root of all disease processes. So understanding this, you realize that your so-called body is nothing but a dynamic cosmic soup of neuropeptides, which lab research shows are reflections of condensed thoughts. I talked the other day about Candace Pert, who was the chief of brain biochemistry at the Clinical Neuroscience Branch of the National Mental Institute of Health. She loved the forgiveness work. And recognizing that if one suffers from a thought disorder, holding disintegrated mind energy in their form, that energy, whatever's stored, creates what we call aberrant chemistry. It's like we're looking way down the ladder at all these effects and trying to change causes by changing these effects. The source of all disease, suffering, pain, trauma is thought disorders that hold the structure of the atom in place, whose structure is incoherent relative to the particular form that the structure is held in. In other words, if it's incoherent, it begins the disintegration of the coherent state. And so what we're looking to do is recognize that if one's suffering from a thought disorder, physiology is going to reflect a thought disorder as pain. When that neuropeptide hits the cell yells out in pain. And holding disintegrated mind energy in the form, wherever it's stored, literally they're showing this is what creates so-called chemistry. If you look at the work they're doing in the cell biologist laboratory, you think the thought appears in the structure as a molecule called a neuropeptide. The neuropeptide lands on a cell, inserts itself in the cell, and if we were watching from inside the cell, that insertion, that energy that we call a neuropeptide, shows up in the cell as what we call chemistry. And my offering is, this is the source of all suffering. And when you recognize this genius 2,000 years ago knew exactly how to get to that content which had been dissociated from in the mind, that is at the root of the pain and suffering. Deepak Chopra, a medical doctor, says, to think is to practice brain chemistry. And forgiveness is a tool for changing brain and cellular chemistry, and freeing oneself from these generations of embedded, disintegrated mind energy patterns. Forgiveness, actual forgiveness, is not about letting other people off the hook for the pain induced by the aberrant, quote-unquote, chemistry within ourselves. If used properly, forgiveness literally changes the cellular chemistry when you're looking at things from an energetic perspective. And when that happens, diseases disappear if you're dealing in the actuality, if you understand what's going on. And then to engage in the integrative, to be able to forgive or remove the habitual thought disorders that are of a disintegrative nature and start to move to the integrative thoughts based in truth, compassion, love, caring, reflections of who we are as human beings, then the tissue structure is strengthened. Fear, hostility, and defensiveness are disintegrative energies. They may seem to protect in the human world, but what they're doing in the long haul within physiology is creating aberrant chemistry that is destructive. And it's just time for us to stop repeating the suffering of the generations. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. When I despair, okay, give me 1 second, sweetie. When I despair, I remember that through all history, the ways of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible, but in the end they always fail. They always fall. Think of it, always. And so let's say hello to whoever's got their hand up.
All right. It's area code 484. You are on the air.
Yes.
Who do we have?
Hello there. This is
Hi.
Jonathan, and I believe you guys know my parents, Tim and Sue.
Oh, of course. Welcome.
I'm calling from Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Delight to hear your voice.
Well, thank you. You as well, although the reason for my calling isn't quite as delightful. As I don't know if my parents have talked to you guys about what I've been going through, but I will give you a quick synopsis if that's okay.
Okay, good. Certainly.
I know that I have a thought disorder, just having heard what you were talking about, and it is painful as you describe. I am a physician, and my job consisted of primarily surgery. For about 6 months leading up to this past March, I started having difficulty focusing in the operating room at times. It would come and go, but when it happened, it was quite scary. I found myself feeling as though my vision was becoming much more tunnel visioned. I was losing some periphery, and found that if I didn't stop and think at each step of the surgery, I would forget steps, even on cases that I had done hundreds of times. It was quite disconcerting and anxiety-provoking, and I didn't know the cause. I do have a long history of anxiety and depression. I've been on medication on and off since I was about, I would say, 16. And as new medications have come out, I've switched to, the newer types. But what I did initially is I tried going off of some of the medications which I knew could affect my ability to focus, and noticed no difference. I then went to see my psychiatrist, who's very much something's wrong here, let's increase the dose of your medication, or let's start another medication, or whatever the case may be. Very medication oriented and doesn't do much else. I do also see a psychologist who's been helpful, but in this instance, he felt that probably anxiety causing the difficulty focusing. I didn't feel it was that way. I felt as though it was different from other anxiety I'd had. But when I continued to have these issues, to the point where I almost did a surgery on the wrong side of a patient, I really got freaked out and took a leave of absence.
That would be disconcerting.
It was, and I didn't do any harm to the patient, thank God, but I scared myself enough that I first took a day off, tried to just get rest, thought maybe that was the answer. Second day, I took a day off again, and then finally decided, because I was still having trouble focusing, even on things that I enjoy, such as reading. I was unable to read for pleasure more than maybe a paragraph, and then I would have difficulty focusing on what I was reading. So I took a leave of absence, and it's now been 3.5 months, almost 4 months, and I have now written a letter of resignation, which I have not sent in. Still do have occasional episodes of the difficulty focusing, but it's gotten much, much better. I have been able to read now, almost back to the way I used to be able to read and focus on what I was reading. And other aspects of my life which require focus, projects having to do with carpentry or yard work or whatever, had been difficult, but I am now kind of back to my normal, I would say. But I have seen a neurologist and an internist and gone through psychiatric testing, which was essentially normal. I have some abnormalities which I believe are chronic, having to do with dyslexia from when I was young, but no signs of any neurodegenerative processes, dementia, that sort of thing. I feel as though through my career, I have reached points where I needed to step away because of the stress, because of burnout. And through the 25 years that I've practiced, my feeling about medicine and the hospital where I work in particular is that it has gotten more difficult to practice. It has gotten much more disorganized. A lot of the really good staff, nurses in particular, have left for various reasons, burnout, looking for more money, looking for an easier place to work, etc. And as a result, more of the burden of making sure that a patient is well taken care of, that burden has fallen on my shoulders when it comes to my patients. So over those 25 years, I have taken maybe 3 leaves of absence, changing jobs at times, trying to make adjustments to make my job more palatable. I do feel as though I am quite burned out from medicine, but that's been my life for ever since I was in college and decided to go to medical school. Medicine has been kind of the majority of the time that I have spent while awake. And the adjustment to not having that has been very difficult for me. And I guess the reason I'm calling is I have this letter of resignation all set to go. My therapist feels as though it is the right thing for me to do in terms of really moving on toward being able to live my life the way I've never been able to. There are a lot of things that I want to do and would enjoy doing, such as sailing. I have a little bit of a nervousness toward walking away from the salary that I've been making, although I've met with my financial advisor a couple of times, and he assures me that we have lived well within our means and saved, and my wife is still working, and we would have no issues if I were to retire. But I still worry about the financial piece. I worry about what other people will think of me, which I'm trying to get over. And I worry about what I will think of myself if I walk away. My identity has always been my profession, and that, I think, is a real thought disorder. And I know that I am more than that, and I know that I can still live a very full life. In fact, I would hope a much more full life if I walk away. But I'm having all of these second thoughts as I get close to pulling the trigger, as it were. And
I hear you.
I shouldn't use that analogy. Get close to sending in that letter of resignation. So I know I'm dumping a lot out here.
I got it. I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I have done lists of pros and cons, and the pros of staying in medicine are really just 2 things. One is the money, and the other is, I would say, just the feeling of being worth living, being worth something. Whereas
one of the things your mom has shared with me in the past is that how good you are at surgery, and that it's something you really enjoy as well. Sounds like
that's true.
More pluses on the other side of the list.
Well, that's true. I think I would miss aspects of it. I don't know how much I would think about it, but I certainly did get pleasure at times from the satisfaction of knowing that I had cased really well. I've always been very thin-skinned, so I hated seeing my patients in the recovery room having pain. If there was ever a complication of any kind, even if I knew it wasn't my fault or anything that I had to do with, it would still weigh on me tremendously. Whereas my partners, and I have 10 partners, I would ask them after they had a complication, does this affect your sleep, or, how do you deal with the fact that a patient of yours isn't doing well? and their answers were just so different from the way I feel. I don't think about it. It's just, it happens. And a much more healthy approach,
Right.
I would say. I never developed that. I continued to, I would say, empathize too much and worry too much and take on too much responsibility, almost to the point of being a little bit hubristic in my thinking, as though I could control everything.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm looking for answers or exactly why I'm calling, except I'm, sitting here trying to do yard work. I'm coming back in and stewing about, am I going to send this letter in tomorrow, which was the date that I had set for myself. And what will that mean for my life? The fear of looking out into this vast unknown, I hope vast, because I'd like to live for a long time, but this unknown of how am I going to spend my time, what am I going to do,
Right.
and will I be worth anything if I am, quote unquote, retired at age 51 and a half?
Right.
So,
well, one of the courses that I developed and teach, it's called Laws of Living. And in that course, and my assessment, what I hear you talking about is that the overload of stress from the way medicine is moving, the way your particular hospital, the staff shortages, and the load that's being put on you, and the fact that, well, in that course, one of the things we teach, and there's actually a 2.5-hour workshop or a 2-hour workshop that comes out of that course called Getting the Stress You Need. And we live in a culture that tends to, most physicians would say, yes, well, the majority of people who come into my office are, their major disease, their major problem is stress. And it is.
Right.
And where do we find, who knows what causes stress? People say, well, you walked into a stressful situation. My offering is there's no such thing as a stressful situation.
Yeah.
And until one understands what causes stress, all kinds of situations can seem to be the problem, but they're not the problem at all. The problem is that we have been taught what causes stress. And you'll notice that, like, if you look at, the people you deal with in your healing practice or your family system or what have you, you'll notice that most everybody, unless they're just a generally miserable person, they're pretty happy with everybody around them as long as everybody around them is doing what they want them to do. Like, you're at the hospital and you've got lots of staff and they're competent and the nurses are good and they're taking care of it and your PA's rocking and, life is easy. It's good. But when those things disappear, stress goes up. But it's not because of the situations. It's because when people aren't fulfilling the goals we hold for them, or we're not fulfilling the goals we hold for ourselves, our stress goes up. Stress is created by holding the goal.
Right.
If you look
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to push back just a little bit and say,
okay,
I don't know of any human being who would need to be in 3 or sometimes 4 operating rooms at the same time for other surgeons wanting you to come in right away, patients that you were supposed to operate on that are on a schedule who get into the room without your kind of giving the okay. So literally needing to be in 3 or 4 places at once and being scrubbed into one case and having, let's say, a gynecologist calling from another room saying, I need you to get in here right away, and then having another room where someone else is saying, I can't start my case until you get in here, and et cetera, on a regular basis, let alone person that I'm operating on, which may or may not be a stressful case in and of itself. So, yes, I believe that the stress is something that I am creating as a response to a situation, but the situations are so amazingly, I would use the word stressful, but I don't
demanding.
They're just demanding. Yeah, they're so demanding.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so real in the sense that it's not someone just doesn't want to wait in the waiting room any longer because they've been sitting there for too long. It's a patient who's bleeding in a different operating room. So,
and notice, Jonathan, that unlike your partners, you like to make sure everybody gets taken care of. You have a goal to make sure that everything and everybody gets taken care of. And notice the difference between you and those partners you spoke to. They don't hold those goals. They go, oh, well, those things happen. That's the way it is. I can walk away. That guy can't walk away if he's got a goal to make sure that patient gets taken care of. And his stress is created by the goal he holds to take care of that patient, not the fact there with the demand. That would be my offer. And if you go back to 2,000 years ago in the Aramaic language, which is the root of my work, I'm the director of a foundation that's translating, I don't know if your mom told you, a copy of the oldest known New Testament in its original Aramaic language. And in that language, the word forgive has nothing to do with, I'm going to let you off the hook for the pain or trauma or stress that's moving inside of me. The word forgive is how I go inside myself and remove the root of my own trauma, which is driven by my goals. And without getting into a long conversation, which, because we've been so brainwashed in this culture that the challenge is out there rather than in here, the core of the forgiveness process, the thing that leads people to liberty, and I would say with what you just described, you built to the point where you had so many goals going on before you said, I'm walking away from here for now and taking an intermission. You had so many goals that those goals were overloading to the point where your perception was degraded. And when you walked away, you didn't have the goal to take care of 4 operating rooms and 3 other physicians and 7 patients and your family and on. You were able to let go of those stresses and notice that your perceptions come back into balance. So my offering is, if in fact it were that what's going on in the operating room and the 3 other or 4 other or 5 other docs that need you, et cetera, all 10 of your partners would be doing the same stuff, but they're not. Jonathan is, because he's got a goal, and just from this short conversation, my offering would be Jonathan's goals that create the stresses that degrade your perception are goals that involve your choice to be over-responsible.
That's true.
And when you start
I have fought against that for years.
Say again?
And I said I have fought against that for years. I think of it as being thin-skinned, whether that's an accurate description or not. I have thought of myself as feeling too responsible for the outcome of the patients, even if the outcome is way out of my control.
Right.
And that does make me create undue stress on myself. There's no question that if I had a different way of thinking about how to practice in my career, how to practice medicine, I would be able to continue functioning. I'm not sure I would be a good a physician. What's that?
We've got the tools for you. I promise. Right, straight down. I mean, you just described exactly. Let's just back up just a little bit. If we go back into the Aramaic language, the word that's been translated out of the Aramaic as forgive is actually the word shabag or shabak, and the word means to cancel. And you know what forgiveness is in the first century Aramaic context? It's about canceling goals.
Yeah.
It's about canceling the goal to take care of Charlie and Bill and Harry and Mary and Hortense and then I have to, and when I load, there's some Harvard research that we quote. It's the most quoted research in psychological history, done back in the 50s, and they showed that in a time frame where they had people hooked up to electrodes, where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits of data. And once that 9 bits is full, everything starts to bounce off. That's where perception starts to degrade. And the way that you clean out that perceptual space, that space where constructive perception shows up, is by canceling the goals that drive the mind to keep that space so full that it can't function properly.
Yeah.
And so as you begin to look at the goals that lead to that overload of stress, you reclaim your perception. You reclaim the space of sanity. Now, one way to do that is to take a month or 2 or 3 off. Another way to do that is you can be in the middle of it, and of course I wouldn't suggest you jump back into the whole thing, but before you pull the trigger on that letter, I'd suggest you at least take some time and work with the tool of canceling the goals. You know, there's an interesting quote from Yeshua 2,000 years ago that when you hear it, translated in English, it makes no sense whatsoever. And what he says is, quote, "Sufficient for the day are the evils thereof." And you say to yourself, what the hell does that mean? Sufficient for the day are the evils thereof. If we go into the Aramaic language, the word evil there are actually 2 different translations of the word evil. One of them has to do with being on the archery range. When you're fired at the target and you miss the target altogether, the scorekeeper would yell evil, like you're way off the mark. The other one is ripe or unripe.
Right.
So if I have a green banana in Aramaic, I would say this banana is evil. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. It just means you can't get your teeth through it. It's like a rock. It's not ripe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I had that same banana and I left it on the counter for the next 3 weeks and I come back, it's all mushy and brown. So on both sides of the point where that banana was edible, we would say it was evil in Aramaic. And it's at its ripeness where it's perfect and complete.
Yeah.
And what Yeshua was saying 2,000 years ago, sufficient for the day are the evils thereof. Don't have any more goals in your mind than what you can achieve in the next waking period. And we do a thing called mind goal management. It's a worksheet, mind goal management, where at the end of the day, you cancel every goal in your mind from time, and you go to sleep stress-free. And in the morning, well, actually, another part of the evening procedure is to frame the goals for tomorrow without setting any of them, so you sleep stress-free. And then in the morning, take a look and go, is this all achievable for me today? Well, actually, I've got next Tuesday's things and next Thursdays, and then I've got 3 weeks, and people try to function under that kind of stress, and perception, the mind, that 9-bit mind, just doesn't work properly. When you start to clean it out, and you realize what Yeshua was saying is, have no goals except what you can reasonably achieve in your next waking period, and now you've got a mind that can't get into overwhelm. But you've got to clean it out, and people say, you just forget about. You can't forget about those things. Once the goal is set, there are only 2 ways to get rid of a goal in the mind. It either has to be achieved, at which point the stress drops, or it has to be canceled. If it's never canceled and it's never achieved, decades later that goal will still operate in the mind. When people say, I don't know why I did that. You know why they did that? Because the circumstance were right where a goal that might be 20 years old takes over and causes guidance in the mind to do a particular behavior that, like, where did that even come from? I remember working with a woman in Atlanta several years ago, and this woman was very promiscuous, and she hated that about herself, but she just couldn't help herself. The resolution came, and this one was in her 30s, the resolution came when she touched into a memory of being about 5 or 6 years of age, and she had an uncle that she just dearly, dearly cherished. And she would hang out with the uncle and was really close with him. And one day, he just pushed her away and would have nothing to do with her. And what she discovered, when she started to do the forgiveness work, what she discovered was what created her promiscuity was this goal to be close to the uncle. Now, There was nothing, as far as she could remember or establish, there was never anything sexually inappropriate with the uncle. It was just being close to him. But that, for her, turned into wanting to be close to men. And that drove her life for years. And, I mean, her promiscuity disappeared literally the minute that she touched into the goal of a 5-year-old that wanted to be close to her uncle.
So I have done a lot of work to look at, I guess you would say, what are the goals that I believe and have not checked off. And I certainly know that there are quite a few going back quite a ways, some of them childhood, some of them not that early. But before I kind of delve into those issues, because I know we're kind of getting toward the end of your show, I have this artificially set timeline that I am sending in a letter of resignation tomorrow as a way of getting away from, I believe, a career that was making me sick. Now, having said that, it's not necessarily the career itself. It's my response to the career. It's the way I was handling the career.
The way you keep yourself under stress in that environment.
Correct. So I guess my immediate question for you is, I have things relatively well set up so that I can walk away, and I've been working hard on feeling okay about that and feeling as though I would have a celebration of retirement, having had a good career. But sitting here today, I'm having second thoughts about pushing the send button for this letter. I guess my question for you is, should I give this some more thought, given what we've talked about today, before I send that letter in? I could take off another few weeks for sure without anyone raising any eyebrows.
Right.
But that would mean during that time I would need to delve into, would it be possible for me to really work on myself enough so that going back would, number one, be a possibility, number two, be healthy for me, and number three, be my choice, given that I do have other options in life, that I do have other things I would like to do in life. I'm just not sure I've been able to make that decision without the weight of a lot of internal stressors on both sides pushing and pulling at me.
Yeah, what I hear you sharing, Jonathan, is that you're making this choice under duress because of the stress that you see yourself, or the stress response you see in yourself, and not having the tools to change it. My highest thought would be, you could do it tomorrow, or you could give yourself 3 weeks or 6 months and take the tools and clean out some of those stressors and have a clear mind for, am I leaving this because of artificial means, or am I leaving this because it's really time for me to leave it? And I'm hearing enough signals from you right now that you're saying, I really don't want to leave, but I'm feeling like I have no other choice. I think if you took the forgiveness tool and you started to use it, you'd clear the space in your mind, you'd clear the space in your head to be able to say, I'm going to move on because it's time for me to move on from this. I've done this long. Or, the truth is I really love it, and I really enjoy taking care of people and seeing patients well and being able to make that kind of contribution, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Rather than
I don't know the answer
of
to
that experience.
What I would decide. Yeah, I don't know which I would choose. I would not say that I feel as though I don't want to leave. Many parts of me, a large part, I would say the majority, does want to leave because it has become so difficult. But I don't know how much of that is just the nature of the work and what it has become and what the hospital has become, or how much is really in my control so that I if I chose to, could go back and be healthy and deal
Right.
with the stressors or the maybe stressors is the wrong word, but the potentially stressful situations in a more healthy, more balanced manner.
Right. Right. Well, and again, what I hear also is the downside of you leaving is some of your own self-judgments and the concerns you have about what other people will hear of you. So you go ahead and you choose to leave, whether it's today or give yourself a time period to do some inner work and apply the forgiveness in that direction as well. And if you decide 3 months from now it's time to walk away, you can walk away with your head held high because you did what you knew you were to do and let go of those judgments about yourself and the concerns about other people, because all of those things are related to goals as well. There's the goal to please, the goal to look good. There are many goals that I could imagine are tied into your own self-image and how you've grown and developed into a man and what kind of attitudes others have about you and how those attitudes play out perhaps in an imbalanced way. The forgiveness process will clean that up for you so you have clarity whichever direction you choose to go would be my offering.
Well, I think that's a great answer. I think I would like to do that regardless of which decision I make. Even if I were to push the send button tomorrow, I still do want to deal with these issues that I have within myself. But I think what I'll do is and try to get a little bit more clarity in dealing with
that would
the
be my
issues
highest
that I
thought.
can work on. Yeah, I think that makes the most sense.
From everything you've said, I would be, if I were in your shoes, I'd be giving myself a little more time now that I've got a new tool and I can clear some of this stuff out of the way. So I've got a clearer head for whichever direction I'm going to go. And if you'd like, Jeannie, if you're calling in on your cell and you get messages on this cell, as soon as we get off, I'll send you a link to our workshop, a streaming video of the workshop, Getting the Stress You Need, which will give you a clearer picture of this that I think will help you see, rather than this short time frame we've had, a bigger picture on how key and how important goals are in how the mind is utilizing resources and or becoming overwhelmed to the point of, literally perceptual dysfunction.
Yeah.
So I'll send you that. Give it a listen. And
that sounds great.
Well,
do you have any availability in the near future with those workshops?
Well, I have the I'll send you a streaming link to the live workshop. And, if you need some support, we can always set some session time up or what have you and to get a little more guidance on it. But you'll get a pretty complete picture of the stress piece here. I mean, over the years, I've done all different kinds in the work. I've been doing this, developing this work over the last 50 years, and I've done all kinds of workshops on some of the best stress experts in the world, and they could tell you how to reduce your, breathe a little bit, take some time for you, but I've never found anybody that could tell me what creates stress, and it's setting a goal. And when you start going, and I think this guy 2,000 years ago had a genius enough mind to say, cancel the goals if you're in overwhelm, and that's how you resolve the overwhelm and claim your resources back.
Yeah.
It's a genius piece of information.
That makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Well, the show has just told me we're complete.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted to have this conversation, and as soon as we get off, I'll get the phone number from Jeannie, and I'll send you the link to that streaming video. And once you've watched it, let's have another conversation, whether it's on the show or I'll send my phone number along with it, and we'll see what support we can offer. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely delighted. Awesome to speak with you.
All right. You too. Take care.
All right. Blessings. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift.